Is Britain broken beyond repair? A new report by the Institute for Government has found that limited funding, badly spent budgets have seen the UK's public services crumble. Thomas Pope is Deputy Chief Economist at the IfG and is one of the authors of the report and joins me now. Hi, Thomas.
Good morning.
So is it all just about a lack of money?
So I don't think we can underestimate how much a lack of money is part of the problem. If you look at how much the UK spends on investment in, say, health or education compared to other advanced economies, we're spending less than average in almost every year, not just over the last 15 years, over the last 25 years. The UK is a low investment country. It has been for a long time. And looking forwards, without spending more money on investment in public services, it's hard to see how you would fix it. But at the same time, just increasing budgets won't fix it. We've seen over the last few years big problems with budgets. Even though there's clear need for more capital spending, they tend to be underspent. We've seen shifting of budgets from the capital spend into day-to-day spending to deal with those acute pressures. We've also seen trends like money tends to be spent, loads of it at the end of the year. Almost a quarter of budgets is spent in the last last 12th of the year, which has to raise concerns about the quality of the value for money of that spend. And then if you look at how we're working with the private sector to actually deliver these projects effectively, the fact that we've tended to have changing budgets that increase for a few years and then dramatically fall, and then at the program level, we've tended to not commit to long-term plans. That makes it really hard for the private sector to invest in the workforce and the factories that they might do to be able to deliver this stuff much more effectively. So we can't just see increasing spending as the full answer.
And also, presumably, it ends up costing more in the long run if you're only taking short-term decisions, if, it costs more to keep patching up a roof rather than fixing it in the first place, not having enough staff, so bringing in locums or whatever it might be. There are lots of reasons where that the short-termism actually ends up costing money.
That's it. And we've had a chronic problem in this country of not spending enough to maintain our hospitals, schools and prisons. And as you say, Matt, that ends up costing more because what starts as a small patch up to a window that you don't do for a few years turns into a full replacement of a set of windows or a full replacement of a roof, or in the worst scenario, a building that's no longer fit for purpose and you have to rebuild a whole new one. And I think that focus on maintenance is one that is a really big problem, partly because you can get away with it for a few years, not fully maintaining. No one's really going to notice. And when money's a bit tight, of course, there's an incentive for politicians to cut the ribbon on a brand new hospital or a brand new school. You don't get the same headlines just for fixing up some of the slightly dilapidated bits of the estate that we have. But we've done that for so long now that we're in a position where it's not just undermining, it's not just that these places aren't great places to work or great places to receive a public service. It's also undermining how effectively we can operate. This government has said it wants to improve productivity in public services, and the next government's going to need to do that as well. But the fact that people are working with outdated IT or in crumbling buildings, that they're having to close wards to do repairs, all of that's undermining how well we're going to spend that day-to-day spending that's going to ultimately improve our services.
And is there the prospect that if, again, there's a big if, but if the polls are to be believed and Labour do have a big majority, that would at least, politics is volatile, so it might not, but it might mean that they could be looking at at least two terms in office. So actually might be more inclined to commit to some of those longer term things because bluntly, you want to be the person who you want to be the person cutting the ribbon at the end, as well as being the person writing the cheque at the beginning.
I'd certainly hope that the next government will come in and see that just taking short-term decisions that might get you a good headline here or there, or might keep the politics looking good for 1 year or two, but ultimately after 5 years, or as you say, 10, hasn't delivered anything, isn't going to be what demonstrates real progress. And I think there is an opportunity. There's always an opportunity for a new government that has at least 4 or 5 years before an election to say, actually, we're not going to take the decision that gives us the best headline now, but you will see some of the dividends reap in 4 years and even more in 7 or 8 years. I think the challenge is that the baseline plans that the next government will inherit imply actually quite big cuts to capital spending. And the next government, understandably, if it were a Labour government, has already said that a big focus for investment spending would be on net zero infrastructure, on transport. Those are all really important things, and we should be spending more on those as a country as well. But that means that investment in the public sector estate is really likely to get squeezed. And I think my concern is that if the next government does try to spend more in day-to-day spending, more doctors, more nurses, try and get more appointments, if you just try and pump that money in on day-to-day spending but don't fix the estates, then the chances are that money won't be well spent and you won't get the results that you might hope for.
Really interesting that, Thomas. Good to speak to you. Thomas Pope there, Deputy Chief Economist at the Institute for Government.